So this is going to be about the United Arab Emirates and Arabic culture. I spent 6 years, a little over 6 years in the United Arab Emirates. I went there for a job. That's sort of an interesting story in itself because I wasn't looking for a job. I was actually setting up a study abroad program for a university, and one of my friends told me about this new university just for women in the United Arab Emirates, and so I thought I'd apply. So I applied. 2 days later, they called me and asked to interview me, so I interviewed the next day by interactive microwave between Dubai and actually at that time I was in Florida. And then 2 days, I said, well, I haven't really thought this out. And I said, that's okay, it takes us 2 to 3 weeks to make a decision. Well, that wasn't true. 2 days later, they called and offered me the job. So in the whole week, I hadn't been looking for a job. All of a sudden, I had a job on the other side of the world if I wanted it. And I actually just started the job I was in. I was only 6 months into the job I was in Florida. So I rolled this around, I finally decided if I didn't go, I would regret it. And if I did go, I thought it'd be really easy to come back, which turned out not to be as true as I thought. I have friends that are still sort of stuck in Dubai. It can be very hard to get jobs back in the States because people look at the applicants and say, why should we pay to fly this guy in from Dubai when we get a good person from the United States? And so it's a little hard. So I'm going to be talking about Arabic culture today a bit, and I am not an expert on Arabic culture. I spent 6 years in the culture. I learned a lot about it, but again, when you say Arabic culture, it's sort of like saying Latino culture. There's hundreds of different Latino cultures, very different in Brazil, and if you go to Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing in the Arab world. The Arab world is a mix of very different cultures. Just even like if you took America, people in the northeast of America are different from the south, or different from the Midwest, or different from the west. So to say American culture, you almost have to say which slice of American culture do you want. All right, so here's where I was. This is the United Arab Emirates. Here's a map of the world. You can see we're on the tip of the Arabian Peninsula. Here's the UAE. UAE is about the size of South Carolina, or about 1/4 the size of New Mexico. So 1/4 the size of New Mexico. Here, of course, you can see it's down below, or next to Saudi Arabia. There's Qatar, Oman, Yemen, Iran across the water there. This is the Arabian Gulf or Persian Gulf here. And here's Iraq and Syria. I got there just before September 11th, actually. That's sort of an interesting story. I got off the plane. It's 11 o'clock at night. We went to our hotel. We were all in air-conditioned vehicles. So we get to the hotel. I was really jet-lagged. I've been traveling for over 30 hours. I want to go out and take a walk. So 11 o'clock at night, I walk out the doors. It's about 95 degrees outside and about 90% humidity. What were you thinking? But later I came to appreciate it more. Actually, that's in the fall, it's quite hot, but actually it's a lot like Tucson in the middle of winter. The United Arab Emirates is called the United Arab Emirates because it's 7 different emirates that are combined. The biggest emirate is Abu Dhabi. You see it here in sort of blue. I was in the city of Dubai, which is also in an emirate called Dubai. See, Abu Dhabi is an emirate, and Abu Dhabi is the capital city also. This is the largest emirate and has most of the oil. Abu Dhabi and Dubai are the wealthiest emirates. Then next door here, and actually you see it has these little pieces over here. This is called Sharjah. Okay. Then you have Al Suqaim up here, Fujairah over here on the coast, and Ajman, which is a little tiny emirate here, and one other which I seem to be escaping, Ras Al Khaimah. Okay. So it's these 7 emirates. Now the reason these are divided up like this, why would you have little pieces? Because these actually represent families, different families. There's different ruling families from each emirate, okay? And they run those. For example, the Maktoum family is the ruling family of Dubai, and they're the ones that started the school. It was the first school all for women in the Middle East, and that was one of the things that attracted me of going there. So if we look, it's about the size of South Carolina, or about 1/4 the size of New Mexico. It has, at 2005, it had a population of about 4 million. But most of those folks were expats. An expat is a person who goes to another country to work, who doesn't live there, or lives there, but isn't from there. So I was an expat. I came from the United States. I'm a United States citizen. I'm working in the United Arab Emirates. I'm an expat. So Imagine if you're walking down the street here and only 20% of the people you met were Americans. You know, there were maybe people from Mexico, people from Bolivia, people from Canada, and only a small portion of those people were actually Americans. So that was an interesting thing there. The biggest populations there, other Emirati were about 20%. The largest population was Indian, folks from India, and there were lots of folks from Iran, lots of Iranians there. If we look at their GDP, this is if you take all the money that's earned in the country, divide it by the population, what do you come out with? 49,700. This is 2006, which is more than the USA. They are a wealthier country than the USA. Okay. As a matter of fact, in 2006, they had sort of a crash after this when real estate crashed here, crashed in Dubai. We'll talk about that. But the city of Dubai had a $5.8 billion surplus. They couldn't spend money fast enough. I mean, it doesn't seem to happen in our country where we have a problem with budget surpluses. Now, what makes them so wealthy? Okay, they have the 4th largest oil reserves in the world. Okay, now remember, this is a country that's 1/4 the size of New Mexico, and it has the 4th largest oil reserves in the world. Okay, actually, one that may surprise you here, Canada is number 2. That's mostly in oil shales and tar sands. Okay, they do not have a lot of free oil in Canada, but they have a tremendous reserve. Most people are sort of surprised to see that. They have the 5th largest natural gas reserves in the world. And if just to show you another country here why Russia is going to perhaps war, look at the natural gas in Russia. They are more than the other top 10 countries for natural gas combined. They have a lot of natural gas. And somewhere way out here, here's the United Kingdom. They don't have a lot. They don't have a lot. Big states. So we're down quite a ways from those countries. But oil is one of the things that paves the way, but they also have a 100-year plan, and that 100-year plan is designed to get them off of oil and build a separate economy, because they realize oil will eventually run out. Okay, now this is a report from 2006. At this time, just in the city of Dubai, had 24% of all the construction cranes on the planet were in the city of Dubai, 24%. So 1/4 of all the construction cranes on the planet were in the city of Dubai. At that time, it was the fastest growing city in the world. It grew from about 250,000 to 500,000 to about 1.5 million in the 6 years that I was in the United Arab Emirates. It was growing like that. These are some of the same famous projects. Some of these projects have actually been abandoned. This one was the World, okay? It's actually been abandoned now. It was supposed to, they're still working on it. It was going to make all the continents of the world as islands for people to live on. This is the Jumeirah palm. It is still there and still being used. This is the Jebel Ali palm, but there's supposed to be 2 more palms here, and they were abandoned when the economy tanked. When our economy tanked, we took down a lot of the world, including the United Arab Emirates. But this is an actual picture here, and you can see all those cranes. We kept saying this was like a gold rush for housing. Imagine you could buy a house here in town, and next year you could sell it for 6 times what you paid for it. 2006, you could have done that in Dubai. If you bought it at the start of the year, by the end of the year, the house was worth 6 times what you paid for it. So people were buying houses just as fast as they could. Here's a picture. This is 1990. This is Sheikh Zayed Road. It's the first paved road in the country. The country, by the way, was incorporated in 1970. Okay, Sheikh Zayed, who was the leader of Abu Dhabi, drew together the 7 Emirates. They formed a country. At that time, there was no paved road in the country. Okay, this is the first paved road. It's called Sheikh Zayed Road, and it went from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. This is it in 1990. Okay. 13 years later, 2003, and you can see just housing going out as far as you can see. And that isn't even, the big boom was between 2003 and 2006. All right, here's beachfront. Now, this is a particular picture to me. When I got to Dubai, right about here, where you see all these big hotels along the beach, when I first got to Dubai, there were no hotels here. None of this existed, okay? I went to Dubai in 2001, okay, and none of these hotels existed, and we would drive our cars out on the beach to have beach parties right there. And so that picture's sort of near and dear to me because that picture right there is where I used to beach party, but this is like 7 years later, And none of that beach exists like that anymore. Here's traffic at 10 p.m., just to give you an idea. When I first got to Dubai, you could get anywhere in the city in 15 minutes. And Dubai is known for its restaurants. It has great restaurants. The best Spanish restaurant I've ever been to is in Dubai. The best Russian restaurant I've ever been to is in Dubai. So friends would call you up and they say, come and join us, we found some great restaurants. You hop in your car and you buzz across the city in about 15 minutes and get to where they were. Except by about the third year I was there, hopped in my car, went to go see friends. 2 hours later, 3 hours later, I'm stuck in traffic. I finally give up and go back home, spend 2 hours getting back home. Pretty soon people sort of quit going out because the traffic became so bad. We would leave at 6 in the morning to be at work, which was about 15 minutes away if we could drive it straight. That would get us to work by 7:30. So if we left at 6:15, we wouldn't make it to work by 8. Coming home was taking us 2.5 hours to get home. Some of those big projects we already talked about here. Here's the Palm Island, shaped like a palm, okay, and it's all covered with housing now. This is one of his first built. This is Jumeirah Palm. They built the tallest building in the world called the Burj Dubai. At the time they were building, there were 6 other buildings in the world competing to be the tallest building in the world. So they had a built-in plan so that if anyone beat them, they could shoot it up another X number of stories. It was actually in the design that they could keep shooting it up if they needed to beat out any other design. This is the Hydropolis, which is an underwater hotel. This is a mock-up of one of the bedrooms. That is up and running now. I have friends that have stayed in it, and when you're in it, you're totally underwater, surrounded by a tropical reef. This is Dubai Land. Dubai Land actually didn't work out or got scaled back when the economy tanked. This was going to be the largest theme park in the world. It would have been about 4 times the size of Disney World. To give you an idea of scale, this was going to be an indoor ski area. It was going to be 13 miles long. 13 miles, okay? They were going to provide world-class skiing with diamond runs, all man-built, in Dubai, in one of the hottest places in the world, where it regularly reaches 50 Celsius in summer, which is 122. Okay, that has not been built, and the whole project got, mainly they just built a shopping village of this so far, and the whole rest of it got scaled back. Here's another mock-up of that tallest building in the world, the Burj Dubai. Here's the Hydropolis. This is actually where you come in, and then the rooms are down out from here. And this is actually, this was built while I was there. They did add a subway system just as I was leaving, and this was a new hotel they were building just as I was leaving. That's all been completed now. All right, that gets us to looking at Arabic dress. So I'll get my assistant here. I have Miranda here to assist me, so if you'll come here, Miranda. Now, Arabic women wear various forms of dress. This cover that she's wearing over clothes is called an abaya. Now the reason for this comes from the Quran, okay? And she's wearing a full veil. Now the veil is not in the Quran, okay? The veil came, it depends who you want to read, either out of Saudi Arabia in like the late 70s, early 80s, or Iran. Most sources seem to attribute it to Iran. And this is a full veil. Now some of my girls, I went to all women's college, about 10% of my girls wore the full veil, just like this. As a matter of fact, she's a dead ringer right now for one of my students there, Nora. She looks a whole lot like Nora. And they would even wear gloves to cover their hand, all the skin covered, black socks, totally covered, okay? Now again, the totally covering of the hands, the feet, and the veil, or excuse me, the veil, are not in the Quran. What is in the Quran, and we're going to strip this off now, is the shayla, which is what she has underneath here. So now she's wearing, so about 10% of my students wore the full veil. Now she's got a shayla on, the headscarf or hijab. Now that varies a lot across the Arab countries. If you go to Iran, they wear a fedora. A fedora is sort of like a hood, so it's got the scarf sort of into it, and it comes down over your shoulders, sort of like a cape to here. And then you wear the black cover, the abaya, underneath. Now fedoras also vary in length. Some of them go all the ways down and form the abaya, and some of them just sort of come like almost like a shoulder cape, but they include the head cover. Now this thing here is called a burqa. Now, burqas vary by what they are in country also. If you go to Afghanistan, a burqa is sort of like the fedora. It's a hood, except here where the eyes are, it's sewn into a screen, and usually they're blue in Afghanistan. It's sort of a screen, so you've got lines of thread running up and lines of thread running across, so that you have this little sort of like screen that you look through, and they're usually blue, and they're like a fedora that they come down over the shoulder, and then the abaya is sort of underneath. But again, that's not in the Quran. What she's wearing right now is in the Quran. Of course, it's become a little inappropriate because what we want to cover here is her hair. Hair is considered part of your beauty. It says your beauty should be covered in the Quran, which is where it comes from. So she's covered on that. Now let's take that off. So now this type of burqa, let's talk about that. That's actually made out of cardboard with sort of a gold tinfoil finish on it. This is what older women. This is traditional to the Arab Emirates. It's found in some other countries nearby, and it's what older women would wear. None of my young girls wore that. Most of my girls dressed like this. About 1% of my girls wore full Western dress, no abaya and shayla. Now I'm going to take this off, okay, so you see how it wraps around her head. Now, if she were going to a wedding, and we'll talk about weddings in a minute, she might be wearing this, and you'll turn around so they can see it. Which is a headdress. That is gold, okay? And they use a higher quality of gold, so that's a 24 karat gold. And that's what you would often wear to weddings, particularly younger women who are pre-marriage age. Now we're going to talk about the wedding. The women really dress up for weddings, but it's going to be very different than it is in the United States. Go ahead and sit down. All right, and another thing that women wear there is henna. Henna comes from a plant. There's two colors of it, sort of a green and a black or a brown. Here, actually, you're seeing the henna being put on. What they do is they grind this plant up, they put it on, they let it dry, okay, and then they wash it off afterwards. Now, a good henna artist, like this woman here, this might take her 5 minutes to do. So in 5 minutes, she would have this henna on. Then they let it sit for about 20 minutes and they wash it off. And it's sort of like a, I'm going to say it's sort of like a tattoo, except this will fade over time. That's a great advantage for tattoo, because if you go out and get a tattoo and you say, geez, that was a stupid mistake, you know, it's not going to be there. And henna, here you see it on the hands and the feet is where it usually was. I had girls that had their henna done every couple of weeks. They were getting their henna done or redone. So henna was very common. As a matter of fact, in Arabic culture, you're not allowed to tattoo your body with anything permanent based on the Quran. You're also technically not allowed to put holes in your body, although most of my young girls did have pierced ears. And here's the male dress. That's what I'm wearing. This is called a dish dash, very nice in hot weather. Now, you may be wondering, why are poor women dressed in black in one of the hottest climates in the world? Well, the idea is the women are inside cooking, the men are out in the desert, okay? And this has real significance in early times. Does anyone know what the real significance of these colors are? Tribe identification. Because, remember I said this is, in historic times, the 7 Emirates fought with each other quite a bit. And the way you knew they were your people or not your people is 2 things. The color of the headscarf. So it's sort of like Scotland with the tartans. And if you're aware, at one time England bans them from wearing their tartans, which are their traditional clan colors, in part to stop them from fighting. Well, here, the colors on this thing, which is, this headdress is called a gutra, or actually really just the scarf here is the gutra. The color of the gutra and the colors on the bands determine whether you're, which tribe you're in. And so this was a long-term way to look across and say, oh, that's a friendly person. Oh, no, you know, you get the sabers out, that's a dangerous person. So that's someone we need to get rid of. And this is the way men, again, traditionally dress in the Arab, in the Arab Emirates. Most people have a white headscarf. This is actually one of the Maktoum family, actually a good friend of mine. And they would wear this gutra and dish dash. This is very nice in hot weather. The Arab faculty at my university could wear this. I was not, because I was Western, had to wear a full 3-piece suit initially. Now here's a thing that's really misinterpreted. This is traditional to the Emirates. They're rubbing noses as they greet. Close friend men rub noses when they meet. They also might kiss on the cheeks. Here you see the kissing on the cheeks. Here you see 2 men holding hands. This is where it gets misinterpreted. In American culture, you would say, those guys gotta be gay. Not in Arabic culture. In Arabic culture, that's okay. It's a different culture. So you can hold hands and things like that. What is haram, which means forbidden, okay, is for men and women to hold hands. Even though she's my wife, I'll let you go arm in arm, but we can't hold hands if she's my wife walking down the street. And I surely cannot kiss her in public. Now the police in Dubai, well, it's a separate culture. That's haram, which means forbidden. It should be behind closed doors. You don't have open displays of affection on the street. But men can hold hands with men, women can hold hands with women. And again, it's a different culture. That's the whole thing. Cultures are different. Now, this is the ruler of the country. This is Sheikh Zayed. This is the original Sheikh Zayed who started the country, 1970. He died while I was there. We got 5 weeks off for his dying, but then the downside came. We had to work all the weekends for the remainder of the year, so we had the rest of the year we did not have off. So this is the original Sheikh Zayed. This is his son. He became ruler of the country. This is Sheikh Maktoum. He started our school, actually, or suggested it. Most of all his daughters went, and he had over 200 daughters. How did he get to have 200 daughters? Well, one of the things in Arabic culture is that you're supposed to do good deeds and charity. He had adopted well over 180 girls. Okay, he had about 20 children of his own. In Arabic culture, you're allowed to have 4 wives. He had 4 wives, so this is Sheikh Zayed's son. And actually, what happened is Dad realized this son, who was sort of a playboy, wasn't going to be a great leader. He did become the figurehead of the country, sort of like the king or queen in England. Women can only be married to one guy. Here's an interesting thing. My girls were more concerned, they were more concerned if their husband was going to marry another woman than if he was out fooling around. Because that had more impact on them. So they were, much less concerned if he was out fooling around. The heck with that, that's not a problem. But if he's going to marry another woman, that has a direct impact on me. By the way, in the Quran, you're required to treat all women equally. So,
where is this?
This is the United Arab Emirates. Okay. Now, very few men have 4 wives because of what I just said. You got to treat all the wives equally. So if you're all my wives, and I buy her a new Mercedes, you got to get a new Mercedes. You got to get it. Everybody's got to get a new Mercedes. So only really wealthy men have the 4 wives. Very, it's a small percentage. Now, as I was saying, Sheikh Zayed, his son was sort of a playboy, not really interested in politics. Dad realized he wasn't going to be a great leader. So just before he dies, he changes the whole country. He makes a prime minister. Sheikh Maktoum became the prime minister. He holds the power. Sheikh Zayed, his son, is the president of the country, but he's sort of like a queen. He's a figurehead. He has no political power really to speak of, other than that he shows up at all the things and sort of opens things. But in terms of the political power, it's Maktoum that's the power now and runs the ruling council. This is Sheikh Maktoum at our school. These are my students. This is him dressed fairly similar to me. Now, this gold cover is something that important people wear. It indicates that they're a sheikh. Okay? Now, sheikh does not mean ruler. It means important person. So really important people often wear the gold cover, which shows that they're important. Actually, I have sort of a funny story here. I was setting up a study abroad program for Arabic women, which was a really tough thing to do. And this is also going to tell you something about the administration where I was. So I went to my provost. Now, my provost was an American. And I said, I'm working with my travel and culture club, and we'd like to set up study abroad for Arabic women. The Arabic women are generally chaperoned by their brothers. They look after them, okay? Keep them from being out alone with other young men and things like that. So there were difficulties with setting up a study abroad program for Arabic women. And so my provost says to me, well, he says, great idea, Jeff, but it can't be done, just let it go. So I go back to my club and I say, it isn't going to happen. Sorry. Provost says it doesn't happen. Now this guy is Sheikh and I am. He's going to come into the story in a minute. So Fatma Al Maktoum, who is the most important daughter, because she's the first daughter of the Sheikhdom. The Sheikhdom is the first wife You never divorce the first wife. Other wives are like tires that can be rotated every 6 months or 60,000 miles, whichever comes first. So she's the most important daughter, okay? So she says, why don't we talk to the Minister of Education? Minister of Education. I said, can we do that? She rolls her eyes at me and she says, he's my uncle. So she gets him on the phone. I have a meeting with him the next week. And he's a really good guy. I really like Sheikh Nayan. Sheikh Nayan says, I really like your ideas, Jeff. I like the way you've approached this. What I was doing was meeting with parents to find out what all their concerns were, find solutions to those concerns. We had most of the framework in place. We had a few things to work out. So I'm going to write a letter to the university saying, I want this program to run forward. So what do you suppose happened to me the next week? I got called into the provost's office. Here's what I heard. I told you this could not be done. You directly contramanded my power and authority by going over my head. And I developed freedom. The bad part of my job was the administration realms, not the Arabs, the Americans, who became like gods when they got there. And so, I sort of said, well, gee, I think the Minister of Education sort of trumps you in this one. So the funny part was later when this program did get approved and we set it up, we had 1 trip the first year. By the second year, I had 6 trips. By the third year, I had 13 trips went to different parts of the world. I knew if I could get it off, it would go great, and the students loved it. And here's another thing. His brother, there's 3 brothers that sort of rule the Emirate of Dubai, and they sort of have it divided up. He is the political leader. He has a brother who does mostly the work on policy and helping him develop new policies and looking forward and planning. And then he has a brother who gets, as he says, the fun job, Sheikh Hamdan. Sheikh Hamdan Maktoum is the guy who gets to give the money away. They are very wealthy, and so when she comes and she needs money for an orphanage, he's going to give her the money. Well, here's the other part of that trip. To run that study abroad trip, it's very different in the United States where we would ask you to pay. We were going to pay for the girls, and we were going to get the donor to pay. Now, by the time I got this approved, I had 10 days to get it approved. 10 days, okay? I had 10 days to get the money, let me say. And my girl said, don't worry, sir, don't worry, no worries, it's going to happen. And sure enough, we had 3 donors who were willing to pay for the whole program. The whole program was going to cost $150,000. We were sending to the Al Maktoum Institute of Arabic and Islamic Studies in Dundee, Scotland for 6 weeks. We had 3 people buying. Now, it was pretty easy. Actually, Sheikh Hamdan is the one who funded it, because actually what I had to do is send it to the president of my university, and he had to decide which one of these men is the most important, which was pretty easy to do because Sheikh Hamdan trumped everybody else, because it would be an insult. If you're the most important man and I take his money, I just insulted you big time. So it was important to take the money from the most important person. So we got all our money and the trip went off, and it was really sort of a big success. Now, there are 5 major pillars of Islam, okay? There's only one God, okay? God is the only God. Before this time in Arabic culture, everyone has their own gods that they pray to, okay? And Muhammad was the messenger of God. They pray 5 times a day. Let's go ahead and start this frame. I sort of missed this because when I was in Dubai, whoops, that's not what I wanted. I did it wrong. Backspace.
You asked that question, excuse me, what he did,
That's interesting.
Dr. Hill.
Oh, just for a second. Why is this so blank? Well, we're having a little technology glitch here. Let's see if I can get it to show this. You want to turn that up a bit? So this is the call to prayer coming, okay? Now 5 times a day I would hear this in the city. As you walk around, you would be hearing this. This tells the Muslims that it's time to pray. It happens at sunup, and it really is sunup. I mean, actually the call to prayer goes off just before the sun comes up. Then it happens 3 times during the day, and then again at sundown. And I came to sort of like the call to prayer. I sort of liked hearing this in the background. It's sort of, I miss hearing that actually. So that's sort of different. Now, somebody had a question? Question?
She wanted to know what you did when you were there.
I was a professor at a university, first university all for women. I'll sort of show that, some of the pictures from that at the end. Okay? So you have to pray 5 times a day. This is called a prayer. We'll let it play. You have to give to charity and the needy. This is why Sheikh Muhammad had over 200 children, because he had adopted all these young girls. He also had boys he'd adopted. I only saw the girls because the girls' university. You have to fast during the month of Ramadan. I'll show you the timings on that in a minute. And at some time in your life, you have to go on the Hajj. The Hajj is a pilgrimage to Mecca. Mecca is in Saudi Arabia. You see it here. And actually, when you pray, you always face towards Mecca. So mosques are oriented so the prayer niche is towards Mecca, and you always pray face towards Mecca. Now, in various parts of the world, they do this differently. Now, here are the words of that, okay? In some parts of the world, they play recordings. In Dubai, they prefer to have live singers. So someone who is a good sort of singer, you would say, because they really sing the call to prayer, would sing over the loudspeakers. And the guy that was in my neighborhood was really good. I mean, I really sort of miss that. But here's what they're saying. Allah is the greatest. Allah, of course, God, okay? Then I bear witness that there's no one worthy of worship except for Allah. So I'm only going to worship Allah. There's one God. Another way that's said sometimes is there's only one God but God, meaning there's one God. Okay? And they're going to say that twice. And they say, I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. That Muhammad brought the word of Allah. Okay, and then they say, come to prayer twice, come to success. Allah is the greatest, repeated twice, and there's no one, then they finish by saying there's no one worthy except for Allah of prayer.
Say it in English like this?
No, they're going to do it just like it was there. Now we lost our position here, so we'll jump back to where we were. Stop the slideshow. Okay, so that's the call to prayer. And here's Ramadan. Here are the dates. This last year, Ramadan started on, it runs for a month, started on July 20th, ended on the 18th. It's based on the cycling of the moon in the Arabic calendar. It's actually, first day cannot be accurately predicted because it's based on actually seeing the moon in a certain phase. This next year, it will start July 9th and end on August 7th. It moves basically 11 days forward each year. So each year it's occurring 11 days earlier. And during Ramadan, you fast during the day, you don't eat a day, and refrain from bad behaviors, things that, smoking, drinking, etc., other things that are sort of forbidden.
So there's no drinking allowed?
There was drinking in Dubai. But there isn't in most Arabic countries. Now, when I say there isn't, there's a huge, I had many friends who worked in Saudi, there's a huge black market selling on alcohol. Let me tell you something. I will tell you an interesting story. I come to Dubai, I've been there 1 week. I go to a Mexican restaurant. What do you suppose the Mexican restaurant was called? Pancho and Lefties. Pancho Villa, okay? So right here out of New Mexico, Pancho Villa, right there in Dubai, okay? Now, 2 interesting things. In most restaurants, they would hire the top chefs in the world. In the Mexican restaurants, they didn't think that was necessary, so they had Filipino chefs. They had no idea how Mexican food was supposed to taste. This was the weirdest tasting Mexican food. But let's get to the rest of the story. So I'm sitting in this restaurant, I'm next to this guy from England who became a really good friend of mine. I'm looking across at the bar. Here are these girls with these little short skirts on, tons of cleavage showing. And I'm in this conservative Islam country. And I keep looking at them. And finally David asks me, he says, okay, Jeff, what's bothering you about those women over there? I said, well, if I were anywhere else in the world, I would think those were prostitutes. Slaps me on the back and he goes, well, duh, Jeff. And there was an epiphany for me. Where you have lots, all the sins of the world chase money. If you have lots of money somewhere, believe me, you've got drugs, you've got prostitution, you've got all the sins of the world will chase money. And so, Saudi Arabia, very conservative country, but you better believe they have all those sins also. Now, here's a common saying. So if you meet someone, you say, Salam alaikum. That actually means peace be with you. And they say back to you, Wa alaikum or alaikum salam, and peace be with you. Marhaba is welcome or hello, and masalama is goodbye. When you meet someone, you often say, Kaif halak. So you say, Salam alaikum, Kaif halak, which is, how are things, or how are you? And you would say, Alhamdulillah, illah, the root for God. Thanks be to God, which means I'm good. So you say, Alhamdulillah, I'm good. And of course, that's thanks to God. Okay? Now, there's two words that you hear a lot. Inshallah and marshallah. Well, marshallah not as much, but inshallah. So she says to me, are you going to have my test for me tomorrow graded? I say, inshallah, inshallah, which means yes. And my students all know I still say inshallah, so they learn what inshallah means. Now, marshallah is different. Let's say she's in my A&P class. I said in my A&P class, you're the smartest anatomy and physiology class I've ever had. Now, if I were in the United Arab Emirates, my students would say mashallah, sir, say mashallah. What does mashallah mean? Literally, due to God's grace. So you're the smartest class I've ever had. That can't be because you're arrogant and smart. It has to be due to the grace of God. So you would say mashallah. So you're the smartest class I've ever had, mashallah. Shukran means thank you. Haram means forbidden. Now let's dispel a myth. Haram, right, comes from the root haram, okay, which means forbidden. So the harem is the forbidden part, okay? It is not what was displayed in movies. It's not a bunch of women dancing around in their silky stuff, in underwear and things like that. That's not what a harem is. Harem refers to the private part of your house. Now, if you're an important person, you're a sheikh, you're going to have lots of people coming to see you all the time. So I have a front room, sort of like you have a front room in your house, right? Where when you meet guests, you put on clothes and things like that. But when you go back in the bedroom or when you're alone, you often walk around the house in your underwear, right? That's your harem. It's the forbidden part of your house. It's the part of the house where you get to be you and it doesn't matter. That is what a harem is. A harem is the forbidden part of the house. It comes from the root haram, which means forbidden. Now, wallah means swearing to God or really or truly. And that was a word I heard a lot too. As the student would say to me, sir, don't take my homework. Wallah, meaning really, truly. I don't have it, or whatever. And then yalla is a word I use a lot because my girls, because they tended to, now my girls, as I call them, those are my students in Dubai, were the height of fashion, always. I mean, dressed beautifully, high heels. They moved very slowly. So we'd be walking across campus to the library, and I'd be like, yalla, yalla, ladies, let's go, yalla, yalla. All right, now let's look at food a little bit. So if we look at food, we'll come back to the wedding thing, and you've seen her in the headdress. I'll help you get that off. So take that off. Okay. There we go. And a round of applause for my lovely
Yes,
lady.
absolutely.
She was worried there were going to be a lot of people, so it's good that you're a small and refined audience. Okay, so if we look at food there, one of the things they have there now, most of you are familiar with gyros, which are Greek. They have the same thing. It's called shawarma, or shawarma, depending on your pronunciation. It's made basically the same, except in Greek, they put yogurt, usually with cucumber as a sauce. This has tahini as a sauce. Tahini is made by taking olive oil and running it in a blender or grinding up sesame seeds. In the old days, they did it by hand, but now they run in a blender. You grind up sesame seeds, and it gives it a different flavor. It's basically the burrito. As far as I've seen, every culture in the world has the form of the burrito, so shawarma is the burrito. Now, they do a lot of grilled meats. You get dalmatas, which was what they call wine leaves, which is stuffed with rice and a little bit of meat. This is falafel, which is chickpeas, or what you would call garbanzo beans, ground up and then deep fried. And then hummus, which a lot of you, how many people eat hummus? Get hummus in school?
Like some.
A few, yeah. Hummus is really common there. It's also made from garbanzo beans or chickpeas. They grind them up, mix it with olive oil and a little lemon juice. Almost any restaurant that's Arabic, you're going to get some hummus at the start of the meal, usually sort of included like an hors d'oeuvre. Now here's traditional cooking. This is actually, they have a traditional culture, little town there to sort of protect their traditional culture and traditional ways. Now here you see a gal cooking little bits of dough in oil. It's basically the donut. About every culture in the world has something that's akin to a donut. Theirs are more like donut holes, but basically if you were to taste this, you'd say that's a donut hole. That's a donut. They also do a flat bread, okay, which is basically a tortilla.
It's just like
yeah. It's basically a tortilla, except nowadays they fill those with like Nutella and things like that at these places, which is not traditional, of course.
They wear that stuff just.
Yeah, these are older women, so you see they're wearing the burqa, which is it's a little hard to see on this one, but they're both wearing burqas. That's only worn by older women. Now, one of the things that's big there is shisha. Okay, shisha is flavored tobacco. It's smoked through a pipe, a water pipe. In historic times, they smoked hashish, which is the resin from marijuana that has been concentrated. It's black and it's smoked in this type of pipe. As a matter of fact, your word assassin comes from the word hashishan. The hashishan is actually in Arabic the assassin, and they were called hashishan because they smoked hashish, and that's why. But in the evening, the men collect. There's all these outdoor cafes and indoors, and the men collect, and they smoke shisha, and they talk, and they usually play cards or dominoes or something like that. Now, it's all men. Again, think separate men, separate women. Okay? This is traditional dancing there. The men, these are camel sticks the men have. They have this little stick that's got a little curve in it. They use it to sort of whack the camels, get the camel to do what you want the camel to do. And when they dance, they all get in a line, they sort of sway side to side, and they swing these sticks in a circle. Now, this is interesting because, remember, hair is part of your beauty, it's supposed to be covered. They have a traditional dance there. These girls are trained to do it. You see they all have long black hair, and you sort of see they're swinging their heads around. They swing the hair in a circle, sort of like this, and that's like a traditional thing for them. This is actually taken at our university. This is Marwan is right here. That's one of my good friends, mathematician, one of my faculty there. And the girls are doing the traditional dance, and that's very traditional to the UAE. Belly dancing. Okay, that just doesn't seem to mix with its conservative culture, does it? But it's very popular. And most of the clubs and things, or the restaurants, have belly dancers. Actually, this is actually a good friend of mine. She's from Bulgaria. And she was a really good belly dancer. And also they do these things where you ride out in the desert and they have belly dancing and stuff. As a matter of fact, this picture is actually taken. We took the girls out. Some of them, even living in their own country, had never been on camels and stuff. So we took them on a camel ride to a camp out in the desert. They had belly dancers. They had hawks. They had honking. Now what I loved is, you remember I showed you Sheikh Maktoum and Sheikh Nayan. About 7 o'clock at night, the sun is going down. Sheikh Maktoum and Sheikh Nayan came in dressed up as Bedouin. If you can imagine having the prime minister of your country, it'd be like having maybe the vice president show up to some event here. They came dressed as Bedouin. The girls didn't even realize who they were. They came over the hill leading this camel, and they were asking all these questions. All of a sudden, the girls, some of them were even, Sheikh Maktoum's daughters didn't even see who he was, because he dressed up well, and you know, came into the camp, and then were interacting with them, and it was really fun. They were really good guys. Now, this is one of my students had a brother who did this cartoon. This is one of the most popular cartoons here. Oh, I didn't mention this before, so I'll mention here. Here you see Coca-Cola in English. It's on a Coke can, read this way. Here it is in Arabic. Arabic reads in the opposite direction. So they would make magazines in Dubai that were English going this way. You flip the magazine over, it has a cover on this side in Arabic, and you go Arabic going this way. So they would print magazines that went English one way, Arabic the other way. Very interesting. Now, in here you can sort of figure out, this is a cartoon, and you sort of figure out, okay, you got the brainy one here. These are grandmothers. These are grandmothers, and they're always getting involved with figuring out who their daughters are going to marry. We'll talk about that in a bit, and things like that. So you got the brainy one here, okay? You got the ditzy nice one here. She's sort of, ditzy. You got the bad-tempered grandma here, and then this one's sort of in between. She's sort of intermediate crazy nice, okay? And that was a cartoon that became very popular in the UAE while I was there. Now let's talk about weddings, okay? These lights indicate that this person's getting married. Now, first of all, I want you to look at the size of that house, okay? That's an average Emirati house. It's about the size of Harlan Hall, if you know Harlan Hall. They have big homes. And they always have a wall around them so that their daughters and things can go out in the yard and not be seen. So you only wear the abaya and shayla when you go out in public. When you're in your harem, your house, your private area, you don't have to wear that stuff. So they have big walls so you can't see in and be seen people you shouldn't be seen. And here are young girls wearing the gold headdresses like I talked about. Here's at a wedding, I'll tell you, the most popular thing for women at their party, now first let me explain something. There's two parties going on. There's a men's party, only men have it, and I went to a number of these. I was invited to a number. I was invited to some of my girls' weddings, okay? But I would never see the girl, never, okay? I would be at the men's party. So I was at the men's party. All the men are up and dancing, okay? Men dancing with men, no women in the room, okay? On the other, usually in the same building, they had these big rooms that sort of divided, is the women's party. They're all women. And the favorite thing for women to have at their party was cross-dresser men. I kid you not. They thought they were hilarious. So they would often, for entertainment, have a cross-dresser guy there telling jokes and stuff. That was the favorite thing. And here's what's going to happen. Two parties are running side by side. We can't see them, they can't see us. Now, first let's talk about the girls. The girls are all decked out to the hilt. They are wearing their finest finery. Okay, remember I said these girls were big on dress. Now, why are they doing that? Because I want the mother of some young man to see me and say, oh, look at Nora, isn't she beautiful? She'd be perfect for our Muhammad. That's where the matchmaking starts. Now, marriages are arranged. What happens is the women sort of start the arrangement. They go to their husbands and they say, why don't you contact, Muhammad and see if his son is interested in our daughter. But at the end of the day, fathers always told me that they would always ask their daughter, do you want to marry this man? Now, here's the interesting part. When you get married, you may have met, or you may not have met. You may have never met the person you're marrying, okay? If you met them, you were always with a chaperone, and the woman was fully covered, okay, usually, okay? Now let's go to the wedding. Wedding's going on. Women are having their party, men are having their party. Sometime during the night, the call goes to the men for the marriage to occur. Now, only 3 men are going to go. The father, the young man who's getting married, and a guy who's equivalent to the best man. They're the only men that are going to see this ceremony. All the other men are going to stay in their party and just keep dancing. The women are all going to put on their abayas and shaylas now because they want to cover up when these men come in. These are strange men, right? They put on the abayas and shaylas. The men come in, the marriage takes place, okay? Now, after the marriage takes place, the men go back to their party and party all night. The women go back to their party and party all night. The bride and groom may not spend that night together. As a matter of fact, I had one of my really beautiful students, who I don't have a picture of, got married, really handsome young man, and what happened after they got married is for about 90 days, they did what we would call dating. They went out unchaperoned. After 90 days, they moved in together. So it's a bit different than it is in the United States, very different. Now, if we look at their passions, one of the things, of course, you've all heard of Arabian horses. Here's a beautiful Arabian. They love horses. And this is very traditional. Put all these little tassels and things on the horse. So horses they love. As a matter of fact, Maktoum family has a ranch over here in the Uranus Valley where they have some of their horses trained. He is one of the top players, you might say, in horse racing worldwide. Camels. Now here's a camel again with all the tassely things on it. Camels were traditionally for food and milk. They're, of course, used to travel across the desert. Nowadays, there's a lot of camel racing. These camels are young camels being trained for camel racing, and they do camel racing there. Dune bashing. You got a country that's mostly desert, okay? Now, this looks like it's easy because you're going down. I'll tell you, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to spend most of your day doing digging because you're going to dig your car out again and again. But when you watch someone who's a good driver, they can say drive right up over the top of this. It's really a skill, and lots of folks like to go out and go dune bashing on the weekends. Shopping. Definitely my girls love to shop. This is a traditional style souk called the blue souk in Sharjah. Okay, and these things are traditional cooling towers. They would heat from the top and draw air in from the bottom of the building to cool it. They're actually not being used because that was actually a fully air-conditioned building. They were just there for work. And here are more traditional souks. As a matter of fact, in that souk up there, this is actually me walking across the street. This is being taken by one of my friends. These are real cooling towers that are actually still in use. This is called the old souk. Okay, and then this is inside the souks. Souk literally means shopping area. And they have different souks for different things. So you go down to the spice souk mainly. And so here's clothes shopping. Here's the well-dressed family in Abaya and Shayla. There you go. That's how you look if you're well-dressed out on the street. And right next to it, belly dancing equipment, of course. Now, I said they were the kings of fashion. My girls would wear, they'd be wearing Abaya and Shayla, but you can see the bottom of the dress. They would wear a dress like this to school.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And high heels and out to the nines, okay? So now, if you notice, look back here, this is cloth back here. This dress is going to be made to Nova. They have, in others, these things, you don't buy this off the rack. They're going to make that dress to fit you perfectly. Actually, a lot of the women that came to Dubai, who I worked with, love being in Dubai. Because in Dubai, you can rip a picture out of a magazine of a dress you want, go into a shop like this and say, can you make me this? And I say, of course we can. They'll take your measurements. 2-3 days later, they will have made a custom tailored dress to fit you for less than it would cost you to get something off the rack, much less. They also did that with purses and things. Now, this Abaya and Shayla was all black. While I was there, that's why I have this picture in here. Also, you see more dresses here, okay? This is what was happening to the Abayas. They were beginning to get style. They started out all black, but see all this trim and stuff? That happened while I was there. By the time I left, about 10% of my girls were wearing these abayas that had style. Style was coming in. Instead of just being flat black, they had this trim and matching Shaylas and things like that. All right, one of the things that Dubai is known for is its gold souk. This actually area here is mostly Indian gold. Indian families, you wear your gold, you wear your wealth. I had a good friend who, his wife, he's actually in, he lives in Vermont now, and he teaches at a college there. But when he was here, his wife was learning to play traditional musical instruments. And so she went to this recital to go play all these instruments, okay? And so they'd gotten, her teacher said, you got to get an Indian dress. So she got an Indian dress. And my good friend Seth was with her, he's her husband. And so they're getting ready to play, and she looks at her and she says, where's your gold? Because something like this, you put on all the gold. She says, well, I don't have any. And she looks right at Seth and she says, she does not have any gold? And Seth says, well, no, she doesn't like gold. And Seth says, she just looked at me like I was the lowest form of life on the planet. So she had to run, so the teacher had to run and get her gold so that she could wear all this gold. So this is Indian gold, and you can see it gets pretty big. This is Arabic style jewelry. Arabic style jewelry is very showy. Okay, often in here it's hard to see, but this is gold with verses from the Quran in it. Okay, people go just to buy gold. This is very classic Arabic. This is the kind of stuff my students would wear. Big and showy, okay? And again, whenever you're looking in here, those are all going to be real stones. They don't do, you wouldn't have your daughter out there in fake stones. If they look like diamonds, you're seeing the diamonds. As a matter of fact, Hassa brought, which was one of Sheikh Mahmoud's daughters, one time for a class where I was sitting in a speech class, she brought her jewelry box to go through her jewelry box. And first of all, her jewelry box was about the size of a small suitcase. And we were probably looking at, I'd say, $500,000 worth of jewelry that she showed us that day. Now here's something everybody needs. Sometimes you have that occasion where you just need a little gold blouse. That is made out of gold, folks. So I'm sure Maria has one of those. You wear that all the time, don't you, Maria? Yeah. So when you got that special occasion, you got to get out the gold blouse and wear the gold blouse. And actually, I have some other pictures I didn't put in here, but there's a lot more of that. And you literally can buy a gold shirt. Now carpets, of course, the Middle East known for its carpets. This is a real silk carpet. I will tell you, if you ever go to the Middle East, never accept an offer of coffee or tea from a carpet shop unless you want to spend the rest of the afternoon there, because it will be impossible to get away. All right. And more carpets. And then the spice soup. Now, one of the things that amazed my students, this is all fresh spices here. And when you buy spices in many countries, you go and you grind the spice and you smell it and you see if it looks fresh and everything else. My students were amazed. I brought in to show them what spice sold like in America. I actually brought some from America. They said, really, sir, wallah, which means, of course, really, truly. People buy this stuff, this old spice in bottles? And I said, yeah. He says, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. Who would buy this stuff? And I said, believe me, in America, they buy this stuff. They were amazed that our spices weren't sold like this. There we go. This is Ski Dubai. This is a ski area they did build. It's 27 degrees inside. It's in summertime, 122 outside. Okay. It's right now. This is called the Wafi Mall right next to it, which was on an Egyptian theme. So these are some of the malls. But this is the ski area. It comes down and turns. It's actually a half a mile long. So there's a half a mile ski track that you can ski down, all indoor, linked to the big mall next to it, called Ski Dubai. This is one of the most famous hotels there. It's one of 3 7-star hotels in the world. You get a fax machine and 10,000 other things in your room that you would never use, probably not. Costs about, at the lowest level, about $700 a night. It's one of the few 7-star hotels in the world. I think I've got a picture of the lobby coming up, which is pretty spectacular. There's the lobby. This is in the main sort of part of the lobby where you look up, and it's really got an impressive look. There's staircases going. These are fountains. I can sort of shoot the water over, and there's a staircase on either side. They go up here, and your elevators are up here going up. And when you look up, it's just incredible on the inside. I went up and with friends, and we got 2 other friends, and we got 2 drinks at the place that was at the top. We paid $50 for 3 drinks. At the little canteen at the very top, which has a beautiful view. These are some of the landmarks in Dubai. This is a clock tower. I had my director of my labs was there when this was built in 1980, roughly. And at that time, there was nothing around it. She said people couldn't figure out why they were building it because it was out in the middle of the desert, basically. This is the north part of the city now totally surrounded by city. Also in Dubai, you have lots of roundabouts. When my sister's mother came to visit me in Dubai, they were pretty stressed. Dubai is an extremely aggressive form of driving, okay? If you don't drive aggressively, you're going to get hit because people expect you to pull into spaces and things like that. So if you wait, somebody's going to rear end you from behind or something. The roundabouts generally have about the big ones have 6 or 8 lanes in them. And every time I would drive them into a roundabout, I'd get this chorus from all over the car, oh my God. So finally when we got to our first stop, I said, okay, we're going to have a division of labor. I said, I'll do the driving and you guys can do the screaming. Because my sister in the back seat would be like, every time we go into a roundabout, she's like, oh my God, I hear from the back seat. It takes some getting used to. I was one of the first ones to get a car in Dubai, and it was a very, it's like anything else. You get used to it, but it's an extremely aggressive form of driving. Now, these are roundabouts. In the roundabout, in the center, there's usually a monument. So this is the Quran roundabout that's in Sharjah. These are 2 different coffee roundabouts, and those are traditional coffee pots. This is some art of the city. They were going into the city. You see in some cities in America, they had these painted horses. So they had painted horses too, but they also did camels. These are fiberglass, and then they would paint them. This is actually the colors of the UAE flag here. This is one of my friends who's a mathematician. We have some castles in Dubai. Actually, most of the castles really aren't true Arabic. Where they actually come from is most of them were built by English that were in Dubai. The English ruled Dubai for a number of years, and they built most of these castles. The watchtower here actually is a traditional Arabic. And you can sort of tell that because these funny things that stick out here, those are air vents, and they open on the bottom. That's traditional Arabic. But the other castles you're seeing were actually built by the English. This is, I said there were a lot of Iranians. This is a traditional Iranian mosque with beautiful blue tiles. Now, one of the things you see when you see a mosque is it will never have a picture of a person. You can do flowers, but you can't do people or animals. Why do you suppose they don't want people or animals? So you won't pray to them. In other words, you can only have gods. So you can't have anything else that might be a god. Early gods were a lot of animal gods, so you will never see any picture of a human, any tiles are painted. So you don't see murals like we have in say, Catholic Church and things. We might have a big mural of Jesus. They would never do that. And they particularly don't want a mural of Muhammad, because they don't want people, you're not to pray to Muhammad. Muhammad is not a god, he's the messenger. So even in books, rarely do they ever show a picture of Muhammad. This is the oldest mosque in the United Arab Emirates. It's 580 years old. If you go into a mosque, you have to cover up in traditional dress. That's my mother and two sisters there, all dressed up to go into the mosque, and they have the stuff there. So that's their oldest mosque. This is their traditional village. This is where you saw the women cooking earlier. This is what their houses used to be made out of. This is a cooling tower. This is all made out of bamboo palm fronds. And then this is sort of a traditional house with some of the traditional cooking implements. And they've made a special village to sort of preserve this stuff because they saw it was all disappearing. So they got this historic village where you can see how life used to be. Now here's some traditional Arabic architecture. This is in the Emirate of Sharjah, which does the best. These are the window shapes here, these arches here. This is a monument. It's actually in the center of a roundabout again. It's actually a monument to Muhammad Ali, but not the one you're thinking of, a Muhammad Ali, who is a famous character in Islamic culture who is in Egypt, which is where Muhammad Ali, the fighter, took his name from. Okay. This is on a bridge, a little monument with these funny little pineapples. This is a ministry building. That's the Ministry of Finance. And a clock tower, some windows, and another roundabout with a Quran, a little monument and a fountain. These are some of the animals that live there. One of the things that's there are Arabian oryx. These actually, interesting link to the United States, became totally endangered. There actually were none left in the wild there. They took all the remaining ones out of the wild. They took them to the Phoenix Zoo. And the Phoenix Zoo did a breeding program where they bred them back up, and now they've been reintroduced. So we have sort of a link next door to us in Arizona to the United Arab Emirates, because these things were bred up in the Phoenix Zoo and then reintroduced from the Phoenix Zoo to the wild. This is an area I was doing research on called Al-Maha. This is a common bird in the Middle East. It's called a hoopoe. Really pretty little bird. And this is an Arabian gazelle. Now this is in the north of the country. Here you're seeing all sand. This is to just show you there are some places that have high ground. Actually, what's interesting, actually, well, you can see one right up here. This is going to be a graveyard up on top, and next to it are going to be old farming areas where they built walls, and they had these flat areas where they used to grow grain to make bread. They're way up on top of these mountains. This is a desert gazelle here, and this is called a dove lizard. It used to be eaten a lot. They're about this big. Of course, camels. Camels traditionally were from this area. I was doing research on an area that was overgrazed by camels. And the way we sort of know that is when I did the research, I was sort of surprised to find the oldest piece of pottery showing depicting a camel actually comes from the Dubai Emirate. And it's a little over 2,000 years old. And here's something from that. Okay, think of Egypt. You watch a movie, Ancient Egypt, right? They're always riding camels. Did ancient Egypt have camels? And the way we know that is right there's no hieroglyph for camel, right? All things that were important to them. They had oxen, but they did not have camels. It's a common mistake made when people make movies about ancient Egypt is they always have camels in them. Ancient Egyptians had no camels. Camels were down on the lower end of the Arabian Peninsula. And this is the little yellow-bellied bird, what is it, yellow-bellied flycatcher that's there. Now, here's some of the modern architecture. These buildings here are on Sheikh Zayed Road, which is the first road we looked at. This is, I lived, you can see the corner of this building here. There's a big mall on the bottom. I lived in that building, actually on this side, about right this height here, right around the corner. This is right on what we call the Dubai Creek, which is actually an estuary. And this is a hotel called the Wave Hotel down here, another modern building and another ministry. Now these are homes, okay? These are pretty standard sized homes in Dubai, okay? This home is about 2 to 3 times the size of Harlem Hall, if you know Harlem Hall, okay? I went to that home for a party, okay? This is a fairly wealthy guy. Actually, he was the 8th wealthiest man in the world when I went there. He's not anymore. His name is Al Haptor. He runs a construction company. He owned the building I lived in, which was funny, and he always knew when he showed up because he's about this tall, and he had this big Hummer that he had a driver for. And when he showed up, there'd be like these 4 huge Arab guys standing on each corner of his Hummer, so no one would mess with him, you know. Anyway, his daughters, which drove me crazy in class because they always talked. They really didn't need school, but they loved it for the social aspects. They thought I was one of their favorite teachers, so they invited me for dinner. So I sat in the men's hall, which had a table, like it had flags, Arab flags. It looked like an old knights hall with a big table down the center. They sat 150 men in the men's hall. Right next to it was the women's hall where they sat 150 women. This is the dining room in this house. These folks are wealthy. They make us look poor. These are all pictures of my students. Again, if you don't think a woman with a veil can be beautiful, this is a student that I think looks a lot like Miranda, who I had today, except she has beautiful green eyes. This was one of my favorite students. Again, Nora. Now, let me do some names for you. Nora Fatima, okay, Nora Fatman, and Alonza, okay. These are all names of the original Prophet Muhammad's wives. Very common names for Arabic girls, okay? So I had a whole bunch of Noras, but she really was a sweetheart. And you learn real quick to look past a veil, know whether a girl is smiling at you, upset with you, concerned, scared of you. You learn to be able to look at someone's eyes and know what the emotion is. This was actually on the cover of our catalog one day. This is another Nora, lots of Noras, and I working at the scope. And this is one of my students working in the lab. There's Tony Blair. We were able to get lots of famous folks to come and visit. Bill Clinton visited. The woman who was the Iranian woman whose name escapes me, who went up in the space shuttle, if you remember that, she came to visit us. Bill Clinton came. Madeleine Albright came. Tony Blair came. We had whose name escapes me, the Prime Minister of India came to visit our campus. And this is Tony Blair with a bunch of our students. This is the mall. We actually got an activity day going on. This is all interior, but these are all our students. This was drawn by one of my students, and that's how I will always view my students. There's the I Love UAE with all the city and her dressed out to the nines with all of her makeup on. That's how I will always view my students. This is my students on a field trip. You sort of see the mix here. So I've got a veiled gal here. Most of the girls are just wearing the Abaya and Shayla. And I want to point out this girl here. That's not a mistake. She did not accidentally turn her head. She's doing that purposely because certain women, their fathers do not want them to be photographed. So she's going to be a member of the party and be in the picture, but she's perfectly turned her head and leaned over so her face won't be shown. So that's purposeful, and I always show that picture just for that reason, to sort of illustrate that point. We're actually going to the zoo. Now, these are a couple of my favorite students here. These are students who helped me start the Travel and Culture Club. One's a Nora again, and one's a Fatma, so lots of Noras and Fatmas. This is another Nora who wanted to have her picture taken with me when I was leaving. Now, let me tell you why you might want to go be an expat. That means you're going to go work in another country of the world, okay? One reason is adventure. Before I went to the UAE, I had traveled in about 6 international countries outside the U.S. I'd been, of course, to Mexico and Canada, and I'd been to a number of countries in Central America, okay? Well, and I guess I'd also been to England, because I'd been on study abroad in England, and I'd been to Paris, so there's a couple more. I've traveled in about 54 countries of the world now. Now, different people spent their money on different things. My friend Seth that I talked about is the one whose wife he didn't have the gold for. They saved up money, and they bought a house outright when they came back to the United States. I didn't save up money. I went and played. I traveled all over the world. I've been to every country in Europe, I went to Russia, which is one of my favorite countries in the world. So adventure, to go see a different culture, live somewhere different. But if you're an American and you go abroad, the first $85,000 you make is tax-free. Now, I made about $15,000 more than I make right now. They also paid for my housing, okay? So the only expenses I had were food and my phone. My utilities were included with my housing. I figure my equivalent salary in the United States was equivalent to about $130,000 a year. I will not live long enough to ever make anything close to that here, okay? Because of the tax exemption. And so I'd encourage you, if you've never thought about it, to think about a job abroad. Go work somewhere else. Actually, if I'm a big fan of study abroad. If I had my way, every student would go to a radically different country in the world for a year of their life, somewhere during their education in college or high school. But I think college would be better. So if I had my way, everyone would go on study abroad. So that's sort of the reasoning in my mind to go be an expat somewhere. And if you're interested in that, come and see me. I can tell you how to find those jobs. And that's all I have for you in the UAE. This is, by the way, the Jumeirah Mosque. It was a great night. This is actually winter. It was quite warm. The moon is just coming up over the mosque, and it really looks lovely. So, any questions?
I have a question. You mentioned early on that when you got there, you wore a three-piece suit.
Yep.
And did you always have to do that, or?
No, they changed that for us. If I was Arabic, I could have dressed like this, which I'll tell you, in that climate would have been a lot. We used to come out of it. We were required to have it on. As soon as we hit the building doors and we were coming out, we'd be like unbuttoning the vest, ripping the coat off, getting the tie off. By the time I left, they required us, we had to come in and out of the building with a suit jacket on. The vest was gone. We had to wear a tie. But in class, all we had to wear was a dress shirt and tie, dress slacks, dress shoes. We had to have the jacket there if we were going to, if there was anything official happening. For example, the sheikh wanted to meet with us, we had to have our jackets on. But we could come into the office, hang our jacket on our, sort of jacket pole, and leave it there all day, and pick it up at the end of the day. Matter of fact, some folks never wore it going in and out, even though they were supposed to. They just hung it in their office, and if they needed it, they went and got it. So that eased up a little bit on us. But yeah, we used to think it was very unfair, because here we are in three-piece suits, just dying of heat, and the Arabs teaching us. And I'll show you something else. Someone was saying, Maria said to me as I came in, now you know what it's like to have long hair. I'm going to see if I can do this right. A lot of the Arabs I knew, got that right, wore this like this. That's how they wear it. So they fold it up, so it sort of comes down the back like this, and mine probably isn't as neat as theirs, but that's how they would wear their gutra instead of wearing it hanging down here, because it is sort of in your way, and you go to eat. And I think if I had to wear this all the time, what you would see is there'd be big food stains down the front and stuff, as I spill and stuff like that. I never saw people like that. It always amazed me that they were always sparklingly white and clean. And I'll tell you, when the man's down, the last time I did this, I didn't have a beard yet, and I actually grew my beard out. One of the things they do in the Middle East that's sort of unique for the men, considered quite attractive, is they have these razors that set so it leaves your whiskers about 1/4 of an inch long. Now, there's a reasoning for this. Middle Eastern men tend to grow a lot of whiskers, okay? If you're shaved, those that have been around the men know the face gets very rough if you have heavy whiskers when it's shaved close. If you grow it out about 1/4 of an inch, though, it gets soft. And so they would have their beards trimmed back to about 1/4 of an inch. So they'd sort of have this, not really scruff, because it was very neatly trimmed back, but that was common. Last time I did this presentation, which was the first year I was here, it's exactly what I did. I grew it out and then trimmed it so that it was just about 1/4 of an inch long, which is very traditional for what you would see in a lot of the Middle East. And well, I'd say two things. I had many girls that were just, I was calling my girls, my students who were stunningly beautiful young ladies, just stunningly beautiful. But the men also. When the men are in their dish dash all in white, and there were some really, really handsome young men there. So some of the young men I met. And one of the things I loved about being in the UAE is these are very open people. Most of them are very interested in the cultures. So, I met a lot of really nice people who are really interested in learning about other cultures. I found the Arabs were really fantastic with languages. It just amazed me. And I speak a little Russian, but I knew Arabs who had flawless Russian, flawless English, flawless Arabic. I mean, they just seem to have this knack for doing languages really well, which I wish I had, because language has never been easy for me. I sort of stumble over language, and my pronunciations are often a bit off. So any other questions?
My question is, how different is the United Arab from the other Middle East countries like Iran?
Well, Iran is probably the most conservative country in the Middle East. Either that or Saudi, and I had friends, I knew people who were in both Iran and Saudi, who were friends of mine, or had worked in Iran or Saudi. Those are both much, much more conservative. I will tell you, you will find, I have a good friend who, this is sort of shocked us, I've been there 5 weeks, and I heard this rumor that a faculty member had married an Iranian taxi driver. Well, the faculty member turned out to be my next door neighbor at the bar. I didn't even know it. So I was sort of shocked when I heard this. Now, the good news is that marriage seems to have worked out well. You would think that that's, you know, the cultural difference, the difference in position, you might say. But no, they seem to really work. Barb and Hamid really work. So that works out well. But Hamid had come from Iran because it was so conservative. He just couldn't take it anymore. That's why he wanted to be in the UAE. Now, here's the rest of the story. Barb one time went to a party there, and she says, so she's at this party. One of the things they do in Arab parties a lot, if it is a mixed party, which is actually forbidden in Iran, but they do it all the time, the young girls will get up and dance, and if you think they're the best dancer, you slip $1, you slip them a dollar in money. You know, it's not dollars, it's other currency, but you give them money. So you see who the best dancer is, because then she'll stick those in her sort of belt here. What they do is they wrap a scarf around, they wrap the headscarf around, tie it off, and they'll stick that in there so you can see who the best dancer is. Anyway, she sat down and they were at one of these, it was a pre-wedding party, and she said all of a sudden out of nowhere, a glass of whiskey showed up in front of her. She said all of a sudden she looked down and there, she didn't even know who put it there, but there was a glass of whiskey on ice in front of her, her being a Westerner, they put where they wanted it. So again, you know, these things are there. As a matter of fact, Hamid's favorite drink was, what is it? Bean whiskey or something? What's that company? I didn't see, I'm not much of a drinker, so I don't know that. But it was an American whiskey. It was
Jim Beam?
Jim Beam, there we go, Jim Beam, yeah. Jim Beam, and that's an American whiskey, and he was able to get that in, you know, that was his favorite drink before he got to Dubai, so he was able to get that in Iran. You know, there's a big black market for that in Iran and in Saudi. Any other questions?
Is all the wealth there
Mainly from oil, yep. But they've invested, but there also was that big housing boom. And like I said, the guy who I went to, who was the 8th wealthiest guy in the world, he had made his money in construction, in the housing boom.
Another question. Over the last years, I read over the papers that they didn't have a form of democracy. What kind of government do you have?
Oh, the UAE is basically, there is sort of a supreme ruler, which is, but it's sort of changed now. That's Sheikh Zayed, who's the son of the original Zayed. Now, the original Zayed was basically a dictator. This is a dictatorship, let's make no bones about it. He has a ruling council that advises him. But when he died, he realized his son wasn't him, and he sort of changed the rule. The ruling council holds all the power now, and the head of the ruling council is the prime minister, which is Sheikh Mohammed. But it's still basically, these guys are not elected, okay? They are not elected in any way, shape, or form. So now it's a little more open that they have a ruling council, but they're not elected. This is a dictatorship. The interesting, you know, there's a real advantage of that if we compare that to America. Look at America. You have to get something to happen in 4 years, right? Or you're not going to be reelected. Some of the things they're working on, 100-year plan. Do we have a 100-year plan in America? Hell no. Because we need to do things on a 4-year cycle, right? Otherwise, you're not going to be reelected. 100-year plan, who would think that up? That's just stupid, right? But it may be that a 100-year plan would be the best plan, or a 20-year plan for the country, right? But you can't do things like that here. I always say, if you have a benign dictator, you probably have a better leader. Now, what do I mean by benign dictator? That's the kind of dictator that's not going to be like Stalin saying whack all sorts of people's heads off and kill them and things like that. And, you know, Sheikh Mohammed really impressed me. Because of the study abroad program, I met with him a number of times. One of the things he said to me one time is that he also has an advising council of people that advise him. He sort of handpicked. And he said, I don't like advisors that agree with me. I don't want a person who's just going to agree with me because I'm Sheikh Mohammed. I want you to go head to head with me and tell me why the billion-dollar project I'm about to start is not going to work. He says, I don't want you to be rude to me, but I want you to say, wait a minute, you're wrong, and here's why. Here's why this project will not work. He says, I don't want to invest $1 billion and then have you all tell me afterwards, well, we knew it wasn't going to work, but we were scared to tell you. You know, he wants people to go head to head with him. The other thing that really impressed me is he said, my people are like my children, okay? And he said, when you deal with children, if you tell them to do something, they won't do it, right? He says, you tell them, you know, I want you to clean your rooms. They don't do it. But if you give them incentive to do it, they'll usually do it. So the way he ran the country and the Emirate was, he tried, like you could get 0 interest loans for starting a business. People should start businesses. You could get, you know, schooling was free. If you wanted to go to school, the government paid for it. So all the things he wanted people to do, he created incentive. He said if you just give people money, he said that's a waste because then they just go out and party and they don't do anything beneficial. But if you put the money behind something you want them to do, so if you do this, I'll give you this. He said then they do what you want. And he constantly never ceased to impress me. I'll tell you something else. Sheikh Zayed, what I said, the first Zayed. Now you got to remember, these folks, with Zayed, the original Zayed comes in power in 1970. Most people are still riding camels. There's no paved road in the country, okay? By the time he dies, in the year I'm there, most people are living in houses larger than Harlan Hall, probably have a fleet of cars, okay? Most of these folks' garages were many times the size of my house here. I mean, they have 30 or 40 different Mercedes cars for out in the outside, you know, so their quality of life increased dramatically. Now, if you would say Sheikh Zayed's name, if I ever mentioned Sheikh Zayed in class, all the girls in my class would say a little prayer. Sheikh Zayed, alhamdulillah, little prayer would go off every time we said it. Now, I don't think we get that response with our leaders in this country very often. I don't think you often, you know, you mention the president's name, you rarely get a prayer. I don't think that happens, you know. You often get some 4-letter expletives coming out and, you know, some gripes about whatever they've done. Is there any other questions?
You're wearing like a little woven cap?
Yes, there's a little woven cap, very much like the prayer cap that Jewish wear that's underneath this. Yeah, and that sort of helps keep your hair sort of down and out of the way. So this was it. This is actually these bands are just a little bit small for me, so this doesn't quite fit me.
Fantastic.
All right.
I was just curious, while you were there, did you see any birds go hunting?
Oh, sure, yeah. Hawking is a big time thing. I didn't put that there. And traditionally, the hawks were actually caught during the winter season when they'd be moving through. They'd be trained, and then they'd be released because they wouldn't be able to feed them during the summer. So they only use them for a certain season. But that's a big pastime for richer folks. And there were lots of hawks that you could see in the natural areas where I was working. And what made the natural area so good is the closest thing they had to a national park is called Al Maha. And what made this different is they excluded cattle. Not cattle, camels. UAE has 250,000 camels in it. To put that in perspective for you, the outback of Australia is being destroyed. They have a major program to eliminate their camels from the outback of Australia, which were introduced to be desert animals there, because 200,000 camels are destroying the outback of Australia. Now, Australia is about the size of the United States. The outback's huge. We've got 250,000 camels in Dubai. The country is so overgrazed you wouldn't believe it. What we were working on is an area where they'd actually fenced the cattle out. And we found that we were doing all these measures of plant cover, animal diversity, but the animals just came back in the droves in that area. And that was the area where you could really see wild hogs because they came in there and hunted rabbits because there were tons of rabbits there and the dove lizards.
Yeah, how many tribes do you have in Saudi Arabia? I mean, United Arab Emirates.
There are 7 main tribes. That's where the 7 Emirates come from. And actually, I learned something really important real quick on. I'm in class, and I was trying to pair girls up to pair the girls that were better, it's a computer applications class, who were really good at it with the girls that needed help. And the girls would call and say, I'm sorry, sir, we can't work together. Why can't you? And it says, Haram, sir, Haram, families don't allow. If you have 2 families and they've had a conflict, could be, you know, their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. You know, somebody kicked somebody else's great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather's dog. they never forget. And they can't work together. They'd be very nice to each other. You know, they wouldn't be like they'd be rude or say anything bad. So I learned I had to let them pick their own groups because of this problem.
So which one is the largest one?
The Abu Dhabi group. And then that's why they're the largest emirate. And of course, in historic times, they fought with each other.
Oh. So do you have Sunnis there?
Yeah, we have Sunni, let me explain the Sunni-Shiite split. Iran, what makes it more conservative is it is Shiite. The basic thing between the Sunni-Shiite split is this. When Muhammad dies, the prophet, the Shiite, which are the more conservative, believe that you have to have someone who's a descendant, direct descendant of Muhammad. Has to be a direct descendant. Can be to be a religious leader. Okay, the Sunni, which are what we call the majority in Islam, is about 75% Sunni, about 25% Shiite. The Sunni believe any religious man can be the leader. Now there's some other differences too. Shiite believe much more in Sharia law, as we call it. Sharia law. The Quran is a really interesting document because this is written in about the year 700. It's comes from a man who can't read or write. It's orally dictated and written down. Okay, so a man who can't read or write dictates this, and his followers write it all down. Okay, it's an interesting document because it tells you about law. For example, child support is in the Quran. Okay, Western cultures weren't going to get child support until hundreds and hundreds of years later. Divorce settlement is in the Quran. If you're going to divorce your wife, if you're going to leave your wife, what are you required to do? If you kill somebody, what are you're required to give them what we call the death money, and that's set in the Quran. So the Quran is much more than just a religious document. And also, this is actually, if you wonder where the terrorists come from, these are verses called the sword verses. And the sword verses, again, the Quran is more than a religious document. It's telling you about how you fight war. Okay? And one of the common sword verses they misuse is this verse right here. Basically, in English, this verse says, kill the infidel. That's the first line of the verse. So if you're not Islam, I should kill you. But you've got to read the second. It's like every religious where they abuse religion, right? They take something out of context. What's the line right after that? But if he lays down his sword and will not fight anymore, you must offer him food and water. What's that just say? You can't kill non-combatants. As soon as I lay my sword down in front of you and say I fight no more, in Islam, you can't kill me, which means you can't blow up train stations and kill innocent bystanders. Islam is a religion of peace. But unfortunately, a very, very small fraction. And I'll tell you, the folks I knew that were in Dubai, they really hated these extremists because they said they make all of Islam look bad. Everyone paints us with the same brush, and we hate these people. And I'll tell you another story. On September 11th, okay, I was in Dubai, okay? One of the things the country did is they were worried that there might be an uprising. The leader, Sheikh Zayed, called out the military. All over the city, military guys everywhere. Said, we're not going to have any uprisings, nothing's going to happen here. And what I remember the most though is this old Arabic guy comes to me with tears just streaming down his face. And he just says, he doesn't speak much English, but he just says, so sorry, so sorry, so sorry. Just kept saying that to me. He's like, hey, it's not your fault. So sorry. So, you got, unfortunately, CNN and the news, they showed people in Iran dancing on the flag. And again, I have friends from Iran. That was not a majority in Iran. There were some. There were people who danced in the streets because America had been hit. But I would say the majority response that I saw were people that were really, really upset. They thought this was a really, really bad thing. And that's a story you didn't hear over here because that's, gosh, you put that on the news, that's boring. Nobody wants to see that. Let's get the guys that are, hanging the President of the United States in effigy and burning American flags, and that's good news. And that's a problem with American news media. Is we like the things that are going to catch everyone's attention, and we don't, tend to tell the whole story, I would say. It's very biased.
It's very true.
So any other questions?
Yeah, I took a class, it was about Iran and Iran and the Middle East. So I learned that these two major tribes, the Sunnis and Shia, they are fighting for power.
Oh, yeah.
Like in Iran and then like in United Arab? Which one is in power, United Arab, and which one is in power?
They're mainly Sunni in the United Arab Emirates, although there are Shiite there. I mean, most of these countries have a mix of Sunni and Shiite. If you look, just to show you why history is important, let's look at Iraq for a minute. Iraq has almost a third split. It has the least Kurds, which is a different religious group. It has Sunni and Shiite almost in equal numbers. Now, how would you end up a country breaking up like that? That doesn't seem like it's natural. Well, it's not natural. World War I. 3 years before World War I's over, the French and the English divide up the Middle East because they're going after the oil. And they draw, all the countries you see today are mostly drawn at that time. And this is called the Pico-Sykes Agreement. And they make this agreement for how they're going to divide up the spoils because the Ottoman Empire, the large Islamic empire, is falling apart in World War I. Now what happens is you say, well, why don't they rule that today? Real quick, they pulled all their troops out, there were uprisings in the countries, and they became independent again. But unfortunately, the borders stayed. So if you look at the problems you have in Iraq today, where do those come from? Why do you want to study history? They're a problem left over from World War I. And we have lots of problems, actually. I always say World War I, World War II, a lot of how the world works today was created by those two wars. They have a lot to do with what you see today. One of the reasons, I'll tell you why a lot of Arabs are upset with America is they feel we're an imperial power. Senator McCain was suggesting that we should have invaded Syria when this uprising started in Syria. I will tell you, from my perspective, that is the worst thing we could do. If you want to see a lot of terrorism in America and on Americans around the world, let's invade Syria. They already feel we're an imperial power. The best thing we could do to make this go away is to get out of the Middle East as much as possible, and get out of their politics. In many parts of the world, we have controlled politics and governments. We run coups and things to topple governments and put people in we wanted. But us getting in another war in the Middle East, or actually, from my perspective, attacking Iran would be kicking the hornet's nest. That would be a really dumb move on our part. But I'll say my bias. My bias is war should be your last resort rather than your first resort, because war creates such bad feelings that for generations afterward. And remember what I told you about, my families that wouldn't work together. This is a very Arabic culture characteristic. So if we bomb them, they're going to remember that for 6, 7 generations. It's not going to go away in a single generation. So, in the Middle East, war should be your last resort, not your first resort. Any other questions? Okay.
Thanks, great.